On this Adapted to AT, we are going to talk about the Overton window, and this is a concept that applies broadly across just life in general. So we're going to start with some really big concepts to set kind of the example of what it is, and then really, as the whole point of these recordings are, adapted to athletic training. So the Overton window, by definition, is a range of policies or ideas that are acceptable to the mainstream population, whatever that may be, at any given time, also known as the window of discourse. The best example they had, and the one that really made most sense to me, is smoking laws in the USA. Smoking getting banned or changes in that didn't happen in one foul swoop. There was a steady progression of things that happened that eventually kind of got us to where we are now. So it wasn't that smoking was banned in all restaurants or public places or whatever it is in one big change. It started with a warning label, and then it started in some public places, and that continued to evolve into more public places. It came with changes to how they could advertise, if they could advertise, and who they could do it to. And so really it was a progressive set of steps that really set the new norm and ultimately made it accepted by the mainstream population. So once those norms were able and rules were able to settle in, the next move then occurred to take it just a little bit further to set that new norm. So again, the whole point is looking at that progression and what becomes accepted in this new aspect or version of the Overton window. So looking at applying it to athletic training, one of the things that I thought it came up right away was controlling your personal schedule and what that looks like. A lot of people will say, it's easier to start with less, so under promise, over deliver, because once you start going down a path of over committing, it can be hard to dial that back. That can be hard for people to stomach because they've gotten used to what you had said before, a version of the Overton window. So with that, you could still potentially utilize it, but what small changes could you make in a week, in a month, or the year that would better balance your time and become the new norm? What things could you add that were small changes, but that ultimately were in place and helped maximize your time? Could it be establishing a lunch hour where you actually leave, or make it so you are physically unavailable to help establish a boundary there? Could it be reshuffling how you would do certain treatment times, and if you do need to come in every morning early, or if there's a way to adjust around that still is giving them benefit, but could you make one subtle change that then ultimately really helps benefit you in the long run in maximizing your time and finding whatever your definition of work-life balance truly is? Could that be just trimming off a little bit of time on a treatment time? I used to, when I worked in collegiate athletics, come in on Sundays after football, and we would be there for 2.5 hours. Started realizing we truly didn't really need to be there that long, and you'd still get people that would straggle in right at the end of that time period and then try and extend the time that you were there. So we just cut it way down. We set the block that we were there, so even if people showed up a little more towards the end of that, it still was less time than we had been previously scheduled. We were able to see everybody that we needed to see, and let us kind of go from there. Another idea is advancing the knowledge of athletic training, not within the profession or your personal knowledge, but within the general population. A lot of people have talked about this idea, and again, it's so important because it seems to be a lot of misconceptions or just not an understanding of truly what we can do. And we just had an episode with Sam Arredondo about this and how he's highlighting what athletic trainers bring to the table. I know other people have talked about, when you think of a nurse or somebody says nurse, you get a pretty good picture of what that is. Yes, they work across a broad spectrum and each job is very different, but you know what a nurse is, and the same thing with other healthcare professions. What messages or changes or information could we put out that we could then cement as the new norm? And I think this comes into a larger marketing discussion of, yes, the taping is part of it. Yes, the preventative stuff with hydration and water bottles and the whole bit, that everything that goes into it. Not saying that's not important, but we've seen more of a push lately, and I think we need to continue that, is the planning that goes into EAPs and preparing for potential emergencies. And obviously, unfortunately, that's been highlighted with a couple high-profile cases in professional and collegiate athletics. But really making sure that those are the things we're focusing on and putting out there to make those subtle changes of, it may not change overnight in terms of what we are able to have people perceive the profession, but we do need to make those small changes to create that new norm of people understanding what an athletic trainer is and what we do and how we provide the care and services that we have. One more before we kind of sum up is everything is the idea of getting changes within your patients or your student athletes to do the things that are ultimately going to benefit them. Talking about recovery, mobility, all the different things, rehab, whatever it may be. What ways could you build things into what they are currently doing in order to help you achieve those goals, where they may not even realize that they're doing some extra part of a program or whatnot because it's been baked into what they're already doing. One example I had is we used to do a lot of FMS testing on the whole team. We didn't necessarily use that to develop any individualized programs unless there was a specific person or reason to do so, but we would look at the trends across the team. And we had just recently changed up how our strength and conditioning program was working to build exercises or mobility work or whatever adjunct thing we thought we needed to into their workout program in a superset style fashion to address these trends that we thought we were seeing and that we thought needed to be addressed. And this was huge because we ended up addressing a lot of things. We were hearing feedback from student athletes about how much better hips felt and shoulders felt. And it was built right into something they were already doing. It wasn't an add-on. It was built right into their programming, and that really helped them do it. It wasn't fatiguing because they're easier exercises and stretches or mobility work with a foam roller or other implement, but with no additional time, no extra requirement to come in, it really ended up being a positive change for us across multiple spectrums. But we implemented it there, and then we were able to go and talk about the next thing and figure out how we could easily implement nutrition into their day or find ways to build that in, where we're making these small changes that started growing on each other, and it became the new norm as you got freshmen who only knew about this type of program because that's what they did. It redefined that culture and really helped maximize what we were able to accomplish with our student athletes. So to summarize the Overton window, the basic premise is that not everything has to change right now. That would be awesome if it could, if we could just snap our fingers and things would happen. That would be great. But it's not always going to happen in that one broad sweeping message. And I think we see that, and we see the frustration of that, especially on social media, when things don't just happen in broad strokes. We really have to look at that large change that we're going for, break it down, and figure out what steps we can take to create that new norm that will ultimately, hopefully, get us to that larger aspect that we're trying to get to within your specific role, within the profession, and other aspects of athletic training. And so while that can be, again, frustrating, and I've felt this myself, that we don't get the broad sweeping change that we want to in just one foul swoop, really breaking it down, figuring out what you can do to try and help get there, creating those new norms, getting comfort with it, and then implementing the next one seems to be effective, and just being able to take a larger view of that and make sure that we're understanding that is key. So that is this adapted to AT on the Overton window. Hopefully that was helpful and something that you can apply in your personal work or as in the profession at large. And we will catch you on the next episode.